Mrs. Peach Thrifty Living. I'm so very happy you are here, and I hope you enjoy today what I have for you. And before I get started, I want to say I set up here by my little gas fireplace that I don't use an awful lot. It doesn't have a temperature control on it, so I just flip it on for a few minutes to knock the chill off this is in my bedroom, and to knock the chill off, and it really makes it nice. So I thought it'd be nice in the background, and it's a really rainy, cold day. We're in for several more days of rain, and that's in sunny California, Northern California, but tell other people about it, and I love it when you comment, and I always comment back to you, and thank you for writing, and I just so appreciate that. It's been wonderful for me. And so I'm going to get started on kids would love it. I'm pretty sure they would. And you can, if you don't want to keep it on your phone, you can get a memory stick and save it to that. And your children, grandchildren will have a wonderful memory of you. This is part 4 of A Glimpse of My Life. And I'm just gonna dig right in here, and I hope I don't overlap. I have my little notes because I don't want to get too sidetracked. I remember liking school, and I liked all the little extra, especially in 7th and 8th grade. We had homemaking. Oh my goodness, that was a wonderful class for me. I really enjoyed it. We learned to sew. We learned to sew by a pattern, and we would get the pattern out and learn. And does any of you remember a chemise dress? It had a little gathering on the back of it, and little back that gathered up, and it was a very interesting dress, and we made several different outfits, and it was really a lot of fun. We also learned to cook there, and so those things really played a big part in my life. Of course, I seen my mom do all those things. She always sewed for us, but she made almost all of our clothes. And my sister and I, that's 14 months older than me, she made our dresses alike many times, and mine was just a little bit shorter than hers. And people at times thought we were twins, although I don't think we looked that much alike. But she always made our dresses, and she could do just about anything. I will also say right here, which I didn't have in my notes, but I just thought of it. She curled our hair too, and we had those long curls, you know, that little finger curls. Oh, they were fun. Back to my sewing. My mom and my mom's sewing, she just could accomplish all kinds of things when it came to sewing. She made stuffed animals, stuffed dolls. I do the stuffed dolls too, and I did make a stuffed Scotty doll, and you can go back and watch that video if you like. Basic cook. She never did cook fancy that I remember. Her food was always good, and we enjoyed it. The best things I remember my mama making was Nell soup. Now, I don't know where they got the name Nell, but it was really a vegetable soup. She used what she had, and she cooked hamburger and made and put chili powder in the hamburger, and then that was the meat of the soup, and it was always so good. Had tomatoes, a can of tomatoes, probably ones that Mama canned herself many times. The other thing I remember, she made a wonderful peach cobbler. Now, this peach cobbler wasn't one of those simple ones that you just put in your pan and then you add a little topping to it. She made the dough, rolled the dough out, and put the bottom layer in, put peaches, and they could be canned peaches too. And I think she must have thickened it a little bit, put a little bit of flour and sugar, mixed that together and sprinkled in between the layers. You can see I can't hardly talk without moving my hands. And she would put another layer of the dough that she made into strips. She'd put another layer in, and then layer it with some more peaches, top it off with a little more sugar and flour mixture. That would be to thicken the filling. And then at the top should maybe put dots of butter on it. And there it was. Oh my goodness, was it good. And their apple pie. So good. I don't remember my mom using a cookbook, hardly ever. When we became teenagers, I think we got one, and I don't remember my sisters doing this, but myself, I would find a recipe in there and try and make a recipe once in a while. So that's what we did. Now, I'll talk about in our junior high at our public school, we probably were not the most popular girls, but we had our own group of girls because at that point in my life, we did not go, and we were not allowed to go to dances. And so we didn't go to the dances that they had. And I don't remember ever feeling like I was missing out on something, because I had my whole set of friends that didn't go either, and we just had a good time whatever we was doing. And so I didn't ever feel left out. Now I want to talk about the party line. Do you remember the telephones, or you probably heard of telephones that had 4 parties, maybe even more, but our party line, when we did get a phone, had 4 people, 4 other families on the line. And being teenagers, we liked to talk on the phone. As soon as we could, we'd pick up the line and we'd hear somebody else talking. And usually it was a neighbor girl down the street that was wanting to chit chat with her friends, so that left us out. And we had a little more, few little tiffs along the way. I don't think we ever got real mad at each other, but we could have been nicer at times. Whenever it come to being nice when you're talking on the phone. Okay, so now I want to talk about before we had telephone. As I mentioned before, my grandma, and we called her Granny. Granny and Grandpa lived down 8 blocks from us, and my aunt and uncle lived next door to her. And when they would want to send a note or get into contact with my mom, they had a dog named Jumbo. Well, Jumbo was kind of like, I don't know how they ever trained him to do this. It's like one of those homing pigeons, I guess you'd say. They would tie a note around Jumbo's neck and tell Jumbo to bring it to our house. And Jumbo would bring it to our house, and we would read it and answer whatever we wanted to, however we could, and whatever, and then Jumbo would take it home. And that was our telephone line. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about our vacation time. My dad was a carpenter. As I've mentioned before, Mama never worked outside the home. And so Daddy would be laid off sometimes at different times of the year. And our vacations we had 2 types of vacations in our life. We went to camp meeting. That was our church camp. It was somewhere, I think, near Santa Cruz. And they would rent out cabins, and we would get a little cabin, very rustic, and they would have 3 meals a day. It was very inexpensive at that time. We would take our bedding and all the things we'd need, and we'd volunteer to help in the kitchen, and it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And before breakfast, they had prayer meeting. You could go to it. I mean, it wasn't required that you had to go, but we would go. Some of us would go. And then after breakfast, of course, there were people on kitchen detail too. After breakfast, then we would have a morning service, probably an hour and a half to 2 hours. And that was more like Bible lessons. And then then we would have lunch. And then in mid-afternoon, we'd have another service. I don't remember exactly all those because I was pretty young at that time. And then we would have some free time, play around or do whatever, visit with our friends. And then night we'd have one big service, almost like a revival. Lots of great singing and a preacher that was a fiery preacher, you know, those old time Pentecostal preachers. That was what it was then. Vacation we would have is every few years, not every year, but we would go back to Oklahoma from California. And many times it'd be with my granny. My grandpa had already passed on, and granny and us four children and mom and daddy would take our trip to Oklahoma. And daddy was the only driver, and it was long, long hours and in a crowded car. Of course, I'm sure a lot of people would be able to tell you a lot more kids and whatever in their cars, but this was ours. And we didn't stop at restaurants. We usually had bologna sandwiches, which pull along the side of the road and get out the mayonnaise and I guess we had mayonnaise and the bread and the bologna. I don't even know that we had cheese, but it wasn't fancy stuff at all, our food, I should say. And we would just enjoy. And so we would have this wonderful vacation with daddy driving. He'd drive late into the night, and then when it would get, he just couldn't go any further. And times he would stop along the side and he would just lay down for a few minutes, and we had to be quiet while daddy took a little rest where he could drive some more. And in the middle of the night, many times, very late at night, I should say, he would stop and find a cheap motel and would dicker with the price, because it was already late at night and was going to get up early in the morning and pay a little or nothing for motel, and then would be on the road the next day. And so many times I remember, just as we'd get into the place where daddy was raised, he would get out of the car. I know I talk about my dad a lot, and I guess he had a big influence on all of our lives. My daddy would get out of the car and he would walk away from everybody, and he'd stand and look over at the country where he was and just cry. I'll never forget that. Daddy was, he had a very tender, soft heart, and he loved his family and loved the people. And at that, I need to stop because this is getting lengthy, and I'll be back. I hope you're enjoying this, and be sure and share this and come back again, and be sure and check out my other videos. If you haven't watched some of them, I've got all kinds. I try to label them very good. I made yogurt this last week. Check out that. It's been really good. I've really been enjoying eating that. And come again, and God bless you.